I'm Tony Plohetski. Governor Greg Abbott on Thursday issued an extraordinary pardon in a case that has drawn national attention and triggered a political and legal firestorm. 1 year ago, a jury in Austin convicted Daniel Perry, a former Army sergeant, in the death of Black Lives Matter protester Garrett Foster. Perry was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The case centered on whether Perry was defending himself when he said Foster, who was armed with an assault rifle, raised the gun at him, or whether Perry provoked the shooting by antagonizing protesters. This happened in 2020 in downtown Austin. Joining me now are Bobby Taylor, a longtime Austin civil rights attorney, and Jessica Huynh, a former prosecutor and current defense attorney here in Austin, to discuss what really has been a historic moment in the whole pardon process here in Texas. I want to start with both of you, and Bobby, I'll ask you first. What were your impressions yesterday when you learned that the governor had in fact carried out what he said he was going to do, which was issue a pardon as soon as a recommendation hits his desk?
Personally, I think it's pretty offensive. He's basically throwing away the entire judicial system, both the grand jury, the jury that tried the case, the prosecution. He's pretty much telling everybody he's right no matter what you say or what you do. And he's making it pretty rough for me or anybody else to talk about justice for all and what that all means.
Jessica, you have worked on both sides of the aisle in the criminal justice system as a prosecutor, now as a defense attorney. What was your reaction?
I had a similar reaction. I thought it was a wholesale dismissal of the entire process. The jury takes so much time, consideration of the evidence. The judge reviews everything and looks very closely to determine a sentence in this specific case. And it was just incredible to just see that all just kind of swept away with one big decision.
Let's go back in time, because I know we have all followed this case very closely, really from the time it happened. Bobby, it was controversial from the start, but also a very volatile situation downtown with two armed men, a Black Lives Matter social justice protest. This case has been filled with politically tinged from the word go.
There's been a lot of ramifications. At first, there was issues about race. There were issues about weapons and whether guns should or should not be allowed. There were concerns about what was going on, and there were concerns about the law enforcement and what they did or did not do correctly. And everything was put in the process the way it's set up. Everything was set to be determined by a jury, and that jury did what it was supposed to do, and to look up and find that politics is now the deciding factor. It's offensive. It's really offensive to everybody. And I would wonder why a person would want to even sit on a grand jury or a jury in the future, because it doesn't matter.
Jessica, part of the political friction in this case, frankly, was between the Austin Police Department and Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza. And I know much was made, particularly by the investigating detective in this case, about how he believed prosecutors presented the case to the grand jury. And so we saw Daniel Perry's defense attorneys sort of take that and elevate it, not only in the courtroom, but also in the court of public opinion on social media. How big of a role from the early stages do you think their action sort of paved a political landscape?
I definitely think it played a critical role. Now, I can't fault any defense attorney for zealously advocating for their clients. That's their job. However, having such political involvement really skews this search for what actually happened and the application of the law. So there was a lot of talk about self-defense during the trial. There was a lot of information from Facebook posts or interactions on text messages to other individuals. All of those things were looked at very, very closely during the trial. And to so have all of the speculation in the court of public opinion have an impact, it's very different than most trials. So.
And very jarring.
Yes, very much so.
To many people. Bobby, I wanted to ask you, I mean, it sounds like what both of you are saying is that despite the pretrial motions, despite the fight that went on, and it was a hard-fought fight during the trial here in Travis County and downtown Austin. At the end of the day, the 12 jurors who were seated in that jury box and listened to all of the evidence rendered a verdict.
They rendered a verdict. They spent time. They gave it major attention. There were comments made by some of the possibilities of conflict or bias. It was concluded that this was a fair and completely discussed and rational decision. They ruled, and it doesn't say much for all of the energies they put into it when politics now comes in and says, to hell with it, it's gone.
Jessica, what do you make of the fact that Perry's supporters, which are numerous now across the country and major voices like Kyle Rittenhouse, Tucker Carlson, the fact that they have essentially said, well, the travesty is not the pardon, don't be not mistaken. The travesty actually happened in the courtroom during the trial and leading into the trial, the fact that this case was charged in the first place. What do you make of that argument?
They weren't in the courtroom. They didn't review the evidence. They didn't hear the testimony. They don't get a say, and they don't get to bootstrap their general opinions to this specific trial. I find it to be very a red herring. It's an interference with our justice system.
Bobby, there are, of course, venues. If a defense attorney or a defendant doesn't like the outcome of a trial, there are venues for that to be aired, for that to be examined, and for the overwhelming, nearly 100% of all defendants, that's what they have to do, right?
There are appeal processes that are in place, and those are in place to make sure that everything was done properly, correctly, all the procedures were followed. This case, this defendant would have gone through those appeal processes, but before anything was even dry as far as the ink, this governor had already determined he was going to set aside everything that this jury and that this system had done to make sure that his opinion, which was obviously to release this man, was primary, and that's offensive. I mean, basically, he just shut down the entire judicial system by his determination, and the only reason I think it exists is politics.
I want to ask both of you, because there are other controversial, potentially political cases, or cases viewed as having a political bent to them on the docket here in Travis County in coming weeks and coming months. What do you make of that? I mean, do other cases that perhaps lead to a conviction that Governor Abbott does not like, are those cases at risk for those defendants? Should they be convicted, receiving a pardon?
So I believe that prosecutors should know that it's going to be a factor when they're weighing the case and evaluating the case. However, prosecutors at the DA's office need to stay the course. Look at the facts, look at the evidence, and apply the law, and not let these political interferences have a significant weight in their decisions to move forward or not move forward in cases.
But I think it makes it hard for a person to take their time away from family, from work, to take their lives and to sit in a jury box and to spend valuable time when they know that the governor can throw out everything that they do and do what he wants to do. And again, I think it's politics. I think it comes down to who is in the governor's favor, and a lot of that comes from the factors of who's contributing, who's paying, who's speaking in his ear. So why would I or any person want to sit through a trial when you know it can be thrown out in a matter of moments?
I mean, Jessica, that is a very important point, because jurors see all of the evidence. They do spend their time. They do render a verdict. Being a juror, I've never been one, but from what I understand, is not an easy job.
No, and I've been in front of many juries, and what I always tell them is that they are a cross-section of the community. They're different ages, different occupations, they have different lived experiences, and they get a say in what justice looks like in Travis County. So even if there are going to be political interferences, I still believe in due process. I think that everybody should believe in this very important right, and part of that process is serving on a jury, is rendering a verdict true with the evidence and the law. So, I mean, I know it can be disheartening, but people have to stay the course with the goal of our criminal justice system, which is in search of the truth.
So, Bobby, in conclusion, you say what, having watched this case play out?
I would not want to sit down with those jurors who spent time, dedicated energies, went through whatever they went through in the jury box, in the chambers. I would not want to sit down and try and explain to them how the system works, because everything that we knew beforehand and everything they were told was trashed, thrown out the door.
Jessica, your final thoughts, yeah.
I really can't imagine the conversation that you would have with Garrett Foster's widow and explaining this whole process and preparing her for any of this, or his family members too. They need to have a sense of trust in the criminal justice system, and this has taken that away from them. So I can't imagine how difficult that conversation must be. It must have been going on this whole time, but I really feel for them as well.
I'm glad you raised that point, and I know I kind of prefaced it with your final thought, but Bobby, I do want you to weigh in on that, because I know that you too have spent your career with people whose family members were killed in very difficult circumstances, and having a sense of reliability in the system is really fundamental, a fundamental need for so many of those people often, right?
I've spent the last 52 years here in Travis County talking about justice and what's fair. I've been on the side of defending, and I've also been on the side of prosecuting for civil rights purposes. And I have no explanation as to what justice is after looking at what had just happened.
Bobby Taylor and Jessica Huynh, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights. We really appreciate it. And you can stay tuned to KVUE and KVUE.com for all the latest on this case.